What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, life stuff. And we're making this in response to a comment we received on the latest video. Very interesting. But I thought you were gay. Don't go straight on me, or I might start simping. Men and women don't understand one another. That isn't news, but I don't think it needs to be this way. And I think there are some modern reasons it is this way. It's not just the sex and gender thing, although that'll always be a difficulty in understanding. I don't think our differences are differences that can't be articulated, whether they are sex or gender related. I think the issue is, on both sides, we've never gotten full reasonings for our reasoning, untainted by shit like media, like the more brainwashing aspects of gender, even though that is a basically brainwashing system. I mean, the actively, forwardly brainwashing system. And also, like, fear of what we are. Fear that what we are is the devil, and by naming it, the devil will come. Feeling like naming it will make real the chains you're already walking around in. Not realizing, acknowledging those chains and dissecting them is the only way even to try, to begin to try to break them, if that's what you want to do. And also fear of judgment, fear of shame or exclusion, ostracism. Because I don't think what men and women are at our foundations, I don't think it's very pretty. Now, let's think about the popular stuff. The goal with this video is to go through a few set things and then to riff for a while. Hopefully not getting into any long video essays about anyone's balls. Men's situation in the world, in the identity sphere, is pretty funny. Men, especially young men, on the whole, are undervalued by society or even resented by society. And when you look at that from a pragmatic point of view, that makes complete sense. Young men are alive to get killed. In war or in risky, dangerous trades, you're built to do the world's grunt work. Because what else do you bring to the table other than an able body? You're stupid, you don't know anything, you don't know how to produce anything, you haven't, even if you have a foot in the door into some higher game, you're still too young and stupid to have apprehended it at the level an older man will have over the course of a life. You're painfully idealistic, and that's another thing that's funny, because you're supposed to be that way. Because if you aren't stupid enough to be idealistic, then who's gonna go out and do risky, dangerous things? Who's gonna go out and die, basically? And where the resentment, I think, from society, older men, women, comes from, is young men are dangerous, especially when they mob up and aren't sent out, or their idealism hasn't been tuned to some socially productive purpose. I love that, I don't remember which emperor it was, I still don't remember which emperor it was, but I love that Roman example of the dude who decided to start giving veterans plots of land, not to reward them for their service, although that type of shit is always framed that way, but rather to keep them occupied, to give them property, so their energy is direct, it's singularized, it's your property versus everybody else. Because when men aren't occupied, what do? They mob up and they fuck things up. Fuck things up for people who are more established or who are more basically valuable. Valuable outside their capacity for force or to be blood grease. And by the way, if you're a dude and you're listening to this and you feel this, strongly recommend reading Hemingway. And don't read him. Well, actually, Hemingway's whole image is nothing like what's actually in his work. Read some Hemingway, feel sad. Hemingway is the classical communist sad boy. He's a communist, by the way. The glow in the darks were investigating him, and people thought he was crazy when he was talking about it, and then it turned out, yes, in fact, they were stalking him. The Sun Also Rises, the best one to start with. It's all about. It's another thing that's funny. Young men's existence in the world, the modern world, is a huge joke, top to bottom, because men are a lot like whores. Young men used to be a lot like whores. There was nobility in the gallantry and in combat. That's something. I mean, there's not any in combat, but there kind of is actually, in a fucked up way. Hemingway was obsessed with that. Young men post World War I, which is I think where everything went wrong, men went from being favored force escorts to slobs who get loads blown by society on their asses and then smacked and thrown out the door. Two penny whores. See, what's fucked up about this is in this, men are not agitated that they are being used as force whores. It's that any degree of respectability has been taken out of it. In peace, you're a problem that needs to be suppressed. And in fact, most people probably hate that you exist as this potential force. And then in war, let's say real war, not the extended blood sacrifices to create demand for shit that needs to be manufactured. Real war with actual stakes. It's not even a now you're called upon and treated like kings thing. World War I put a stop to that. Now a young man's experience for combat is like a housewife's duty, quotes, for sex in the 50s. Get in there and spread them. My point in going through all this is young men are at the bottom of the ladder, and the bottom of the ladder is as uglified as it can be. And even that makes sense, but it pisses people off. But another thing it does is it creates demand. Now, before we get into that, the way I view society, the way it's structured, is young men at the very bottom, degrees of women in the middle, and successful older men at the very top. This shit got a motherfucker thinking about Jake and his closet of supporters. I think society is owned and structured by wealthy old men or wealthy old women in the patriarchal model, designed to appeal mostly to the average of women, not out of any love for women, and not anything I think women actually want. This is basic, it's some superficial yet important level of appeal, mainly to extract wealth from women and to keep them in line, because women can become a problem very quickly. But because they aren't the force monopoly the way young men are, they're easier to keep in line. Something I got, or an impression I got from the comments, concerns, and voice was lots of fear and anxiety in women, which sucks for them, but great if you are someone who intends to control society. It's really great that the demographic you alone most need to control is also afraid. And because men are men, and another aspect of men we'll get to, if you have control of women and you don't push men too hard, the men will stay under control as long as the women stay under control. All this to say, most of the demand for production or for whatever is coming from women, is aimed at women, but the additional pushing that's been going on with men in the last 100 years has started to create a demand from men. And I think that's been picking up a lot quicker recently. Hemingway was the first, I think the first, to tap into it, into exactly what we're talking about here. Even Patrice in the early 2000s, or mid to late 2000s, recognized what was going on. And now the demand has grown enough we can see it and, to an extent, articulate it, but I don't think we've gotten to a point we can articulate it totally. Which is why men are fucked up. Even more fucked up than they're supposed to be. And the demand is a desire for validation, for unmet needs. And I was thinking about incels and incel core again. I think that's one form of what we're talking about. And their sex demands, especially the way they demand it, as in they deserve it, that's obnoxious and stupid. But why it's so important, as in, why, if that is detestable to me, why does what they do, especially the art they produce, speak to me still? If I believe I have nothing in common with these people, there must be something in common. And I think it's that their sex demands are one configuration of this deeper unmet desire. And I keep putting it off because I want to get through this. This video's I can already tell is going to be a lot longer than I intended it to be. That desire is victory. Victory all the way down. Down into the irrational. Down into the impossible. And that comment got into genes a bit, which maybe we'll talk about. We've talked about it a bunch of times on this channel, but there are basic, I think, psychological and spiritual differences between men and women, but gender runs so deep, it makes it hard to tell what a biological psychological difference is and what a gendered brainwashing difference is. I think a man's desire for victory is a biological one, which is unsettling, and that's why this man discourse has gotten fucked up, which we're trying to get to. Men are unable to be victorious, to feel like there's even a chance they could fight and achieve victory over anything. Fuck the huge abstract ideas. You can't even get a victory against, like, your car payment. And I say car payment, and I know the moment I say that, a lot of young dudes will immediately go, what car payment? I can't even get a fucking car. What are you talking about? And when I say victory, I mean, and I really cannot overstate, it's like a spine in your soul, a spine in your stomach, a spine in your spine, a spine that's more firm than the facts of reality are. It's this basic omni-desire. This desire affects everything else. Everything else is auxiliary to it, to shape the world in your image and to crush anything that wants you not to do that. I mean, look at even the most charitable, sweetest dudes. Listen to the ways they talk about their charity. They always frame it as a desire to conquer something, even conquering the need to conquer. And men have been increasingly denied. It's not even a privilege. It's not even a need. It's Well, it is a need, but it's your nature. You are being denied the crumbs of your nature. And that's enough to get anyone a little quirky. Hence this rising demand. And looping all the way back to the beginning, men's situation is funny because because of this demand, men have actually received better, at least attempts at examination and validation than women have, or the ruling classes. But I don't think ruling classes really need this sort of validation because they already have it. I mean, in terms of dudes, think about a dude born into money versus a dude who's new money or no money. That was almost a laugh. You might hate the new money or no money dudes. You probably have every reason to. But they have identities. Or at least they have a desire for identity. Which, that's another thing the comment mentioned. This idea that men desire identity and this is a cognitive functions thing, not a man thing. I don't think man identity is as important. It's important, but it's still subservient to victory. Maybe we'll get to, or maybe we'll address that as we go along. But look at old money dudes. Dudes born into money. They're fish. They have fish eyes. You can see wealth in dudes' eyes, at least when it was given to them. And they expect to continue to be given that wealth or continue to have it, the ability to use it. Fish eyes. Maybe they take up a cause, maybe some flame is ignited in them, and they go out and do something. It seems like lots of people care about, or dudes people care about, were actually wealthy. But they don't need to. In victory speak, they are already afforded enough victory. And this is what I'm saying by identity is auxiliary. I don't think if a man could achieve victory relatively easy with whatever he wanted, I don't think identity would be super important to that man. Or it would be luxury. Other dudes need identity because identity is a weapon. Identity is the sharpest sword, the most durable sword you can get your hands on, and it only gets sharper. But, and I was thinking about this and I commented on it in the last video, being realistic and being honest, if you could achieve the victories you feel driven at least to want to achieve without a hyper sharp identity, would you spend so much time and effort on your identity? Identity is one of the most important things in life to me, and no, I wouldn't. Or let's say if there were something else that were a super sharp sword that functioned the way identity did, at least in terms of victory, I would probably be using that thing. Because identity is a means to an end for men. And you can disagree with that. I'll bet you'll disagree with that. But let's think about this man examination validation our demand has created and is now being catered to. On the identity front, we are receiving, ironically, more attention and better attention, if not perfect attention. But it's not perfect as in it's dishonest about what men are, because that victory truth is something men seem very uncomfortable with or afraid of. Because it's ugly. It's really ugly. So the articulation or articulations of masculinity, because there are tons of different configurations of masculinity, some of them will actually be pretty good. Up until it comes time to address what you feel you lack or what you feel you're denied, or the reason you're doing things and wanting things. Then they stumble and they lie to keep you satisfied, to keep you feeling good about yourself, and also to keep your money flowing into their hands. And I'm talking about moralization, idealism. It's not that you are a base creature that cares only for victory, like some Conan the Barbarian shit. You are a freedom fighter, or you're a noble struggler, or you're a stoic. You're not fighting because you want to kill, to destroy anything, even down to the fabric of reality, for standing in your way, for expanding your domain, or resisting your expanding your domain. You have good reasons. You're a good person. And maybe you do have good reasons, maybe you are a good person, but in those cases, which I think are actually pretty rare, it's a matter of allocation, where you are directing your nature. Those things are not your nature. Those are the things you are slotting your nature into so you can sleep at night. Incels, classical incels, stink, but at least they're honest. Man is an ugly thing. Oh, and I've been thinking about doing a series of videos about man media. We have holy texts on this channel, although we haven't used that verbiage in some time. Videos about man holy texts, the most basic ones, and then maybe videos about the different configurations of masculinity or different sorts of masculinity these other movies or media are playing to or modeling, articulated in the way I try to articulate things. That might be fun and productive. And for the women around the channel, what's stopping you from doing something similar? Articulating your point of view as honestly as you can, without all this interference shit, so we can try to understand one another for real, because I think it's possible. But anyway, with men, you'll get some of that validation and examination, efforts at recognizing masculinity, and almost getting there, in some cases, only to stumble at that last step, failing to acknowledge the keystone of what you are, what men are, so you can feel better about yourself, so you don't need to feel afraid of rejection. Now, this isn't to say great looks into men are all over the place. They aren't. But because of the demand we've created, we've gotten some pretty good ones. Like Fight Club, I think, is the man movie. Even if you criticize it, or you don't like it, you don't like what it represents, as a dude, if you're someone who doesn't like it, it's probably because it makes you uncomfortable. And it's because you're uncomfortable because you recognize what it's tapping into. And when I reference Fight Club here, I'm not proposing it as a model of what men should be, or even in total what men are, but it's, at least in my experience, the closest, the movie, most condensed form of male concern. And with what men are in relation to women, I think man-woman relations are getting worse, ironically again, as the fields are getting more fertile, because I don't think we're anywhere near a real breaking point yet, but things are getting worse, and that's the direction we're moving. In most cases, men are lying to women and to themselves, both to be accepted by women and so they don't have to confront what they are. When in reality, I mean, this is the essence of shadow work. Once you accept what you are, you realize, one, it's not that bad, and two, if you still don't like it, then now at least you're able to do something about it, instead of hiding and lying. And as dudes, you're doing women a disservice too, not to mention yourselves, because how can you expect anyone to understand you if you're afraid of yourself and you're hiding it? Who cares if you're rejected? If you got accepted by hiding what you are, that doesn't change the fact you are what you are. And who knows? Maybe you'll find it's easier to get along as a dude with women when you both know what you are and then can decide how to work around that if you want to work around that. Or even if it's something that needs to be worked around, frankly. I don't think the aspects of ourselves we hide are anywhere near as powerful as the power we give them is. I mean, there are absolutely aspects of yourself you need to hide sometimes or always, but even in those cases, the the negative reaction you would get from people, it might be really bad, but it's not as bad as you think it could be. But don't base your decisions on that, because even though I'm saying this, I'm well aware if you dip your toe into that honesty water, the planet itself will come and kill you. So take everything I'm saying here with a grain of salt. But now we look over at women. Women are difficult to understand, especially as a man, because it seems like everything we're told women are, even by them, is not at all what they are. And I think there are a few reasons for that. First is commodification. Well, actually, no, let's build the foundation first so everything will make sense. I mentioned in that last video, I think what women are here to do in life, the way men are here to conquer, is to identify or identitize. Now, I'm not 100% certain that's the case. Forgive me, I'm working with only observation here. But the way men are driven by conquest down to the most irrational levels, to my eyes, women are driven by identity down to the most irrational levels. And in the same way man uses identity to aid his conquest, I think women can and do use conquest to aid in their identity efforts. As in, this is another uncomfortable thing. Think about relationships. As a dude, what are you looking for in a partner? If you strip away the shit, well, there are two ways of looking. Well, no, it is one way. You're looking for someone who is loyal to your conquest. You are looking for the most loyal soldier in whatever battle it is you intend to fight. But then, as that commenter said, and as you observe in life, there are these dudes who like these lame, submissive bitches. Pathetic. It's uncomfortable because the root of what they're doing is actually the same as what you're doing. They're just going about it in a really stupid, unsophisticated way. They want a partner, so at least they have something they can feel they can conquer. I can't conquer the planet. I can't conquer my boss or my job. I can't even conquer rent. But at least I can conquer her. And that is a... It's not pathetic. Pathetic. Abigail Marston, pathetic, is the word that keeps coming to mind. But why is it pathetic? It's because that, as a man, feels like the lowest form of satisfying that conquest urge. To the point it's disrespectful almost. Not to the women, fuck the women in this case, but disrespectful to what you are. But think about your relationships. And remember, these things can look very similar. Because I think they're supposed to intertwine. Frankly, that's what I'm beginning to think is man drive and woman drive are designed to be with each other. Crazy thought. And that's another reason queerness is so important, is so we can figure out better how these things operate. Because we're talking men and women, I still believe it's a spiritual forces thing. Anyway, what are women looking for? Someone to identify with, someone to identitize, someone to identitize them. In men's relationships, men are thinking, what are we doing together? With women, they're thinking, what are we becoming together? In all my relationships, even with ENTJ women, that was their concern. And it's not always expressed in a mushy gushy way. And I don't think it's always a coming together and becoming one and being better thing either. As long as identitizing is going on and evolving, it's not so important what you're identifying into. And thinking about it in this way, maybe women's role in the partnership is evolution. And I think conquest and identity go hand in hand, or at least they can. They're very complementary to one another, as long as you're aware of each party's basic needs. Men are trying to stamp out threats, even if they're small or abstract, and women are trying to perform ego location and evolution or adaptation. If you want to conquer, you'll need to identify and to evolve. If you want to identify, there are threats that need to be dealt with. So I think men and women, or at least the energies behind them, are made for one another. And that's, again, I'm having a bit of an extended falling out with gay dudes, but lesbians have been just diesel pushers. We need to study lesbians extensively so we can understand what the complement in those relationships is. Because I it has to be, if it's, I need to understand if it's not with these advanced lesbians, women with quotes man spine, then what is it? Or if it is women who happen to have man instinct, then maybe it's not biological, and if it isn't, then what is it? How do you get that? There's too much to figure out here. We remain in heterosexuality this time. Now, why is this identity awareness important in understanding, again, ironically, this is also kind of funny, a bit of a joke, why we don't understand women at all? First and most basic is commodification. Women are this middle class. It's a way to make money, way to cement control, but the cementing control part is more important. Let's get to that. Suppression. Women perform two primary functions in a society, at least when you're looking at it from this hierarchical perspective. Women rule the white collar. They rule middle management. You need someone to keep the logistics network running. And it's better when the people you have running it don't have this basic need to conquer. You're creating a degree of separation between those people who do have that motivation to conquer and the people who are in charge. And then additionally, women, or the other function women serve in society, is to hold the keys to men. Why are men afraid of acknowledging what they are and accepting what they are and being honest about it? Because they think, or they're afraid, women will hate them for it. And considering how cemented gender is and how cemented this entire system is, they're not wrong for thinking and feeling that way. By controlling what women do and don't approve of, the powers that be control what men will and won't spec into. Andrew Tate was a flash in the pan for a number of reasons. One, because he was using that male conquest desire to market and to grift, but he was doing it in a really dumb way, a doomed to fail way. But there are grifters of all sorts who are still around, who also promote doomed to fail shit and are still popular. So that's part of why Andrew Tate fell off. But why did he really fall off? Because by and large, women didn't approve of him or that train of thought. Some of his followers, some of the time, would achieve success, but it's not a standard trail forward. No trail has been blazed. It was people running wildly through the woods and a few of them making it, because a few people always make it. And actually, Andrew Tate almost feels like controlled opposition. Something propped up to be shot down to reinforce the norm. Because if this was supposed to be the alternative way to be, I don't know, it's like destroy by getting, well, it's controlled opposition. It's not fucking rocket science. Getting a shitty example to fill that slot reinforces the status norm. Women didn't like him. I think they were right not to like him, but that's almost what makes it more insidious. Reinforcing that approve, disapprove, control over men mechanism. With approval or disapproval, women keep men in line. I think that's one of the reasons why these on the street, beautiful, judgy women are so intimidating. They're designed to have power in this system, the power to keep men in line, like street judges, and they like doing it. And it's important for the status quo that they like doing it. The entire ick thing. Women are here to control men's behavior, particularly young men. But to do all this, to be ultimate servants of a status quo, there needs to be a status quo or an idea of a status quo for them to work around. How do you establish that or imprint that or, like Inception, get it into their heads? I haven't worked this out totally because, again, thus far, just about all I've been able to work using is observations, because everything we're told about women is not what women are. I think it's fear. Now, as the commenter said, it seems like women are more sensitive to threats and are always scanning for them. And for good reason. But that's also a perfect vector to establish a status quo through. As long as you keep yourselves and men to this standard, threats will be reduced. I think that's the way it works. Especially in relation to men. Knowing what men are, it's very reasonable to be afraid of men. Or at least to keep your guard up and, as that commenter said, your threat scanning on high around them. And it would seem reducing men as threats would be in your best interest. It's convenient, then, that reducing men as threats are also in the powers that be's best interest. Now, what standard do you establish to make that happen? Anything that pussifies men, that makes them weak, or that makes them feel ashamed of wanting to be strong. I mean, really, as a dude, have you ever noticed that? How many women that you've interacted with in your entire life have encouraged you to get stronger? I've been chipping my way probably 15 minutes at a time through the first episode of The Penguin, and I'm liking it a lot, but I guess not so much that I'll sit down and watch an entire episode all the way through, though maybe that's my attention span. But it was shocking that Oswald's mother gassed him up. He makes a risky, bad decision, and instead of shaming him for it or trying to make him not make decisions like those again, she pushes him further. Go out and conquer, my son. If you're a dude, what's your experience with most women most of the time in your life, throughout your life? Either they are emasculating you, and oh god, I love the fucking Black Phillip show, I love Saint O'Neill, when that annoying bitch emasculated that dude, and didn't even realize she was doing it. This must be a natural thing. Because with some women, you'll get the hostile emasculation, like the ick thing. But then you'll get these positive emasculations that undercut any effort at strength or the idea that you could conquer at all. Or if they don't do either of those things, they will move you in conversation into identity areas, which is not directly emasculation, but it is moving you away from what you are. Most women, most of the time, probably on an unconscious level, are trying to move you away from your conquest drive. So, okay, in the status quo, weakening men is one. What's the other one? Commodification, consumerism, using women's identity drive to drive sales or to drive participation in things, and thereby, by extension, market to men and get them hooked into consumerism. That's why these female empowerment stories, or really anything about women, it's not woke propaganda, it's a reinforcement of a false status quo that is beneficial to the powers that be on two fronts: keeping the men weak, keeping the economy running. And with men, where their examination fails, it's the morality thing. So, what is preventing women from articulating their experience as it is? Or even attempting to, it seems like. I think, again, it's fear. First glance makes me think this status quo identity or set of principles is what's been accepted, or at least appears to be accepted. So the fear comes from falling outside this identity norm, which is in that way actually not that dissimilar to men. But even if that's the case, I'll bet there's another layer to it I'm not seeing yet. But of course, I don't think that's all it is. But whatever is keeping women so divorced from speaking about, maybe even thinking about in some cases, their own experience as they experience it, it has to come down to fear. It's just a matter of where it's being applied and how and why. Because almost all of the time, women will not talk about what they are. It's always canned shit, either very popularly canned shit, or less popular but still media or philosophy granted canned shit. So rare is the personal experience. This is who I am. This is what my life is like. This is what I do. This is why I do it. You do not see that. What you get is product filtered with product, and if you're a man, social aggression. And maybe if you're a woman, social aggression too, but... Well, no, if you're a woman, social aggression definitely, but again, I don't understand it yet, because I'm working only off observation. In summary, I think men and women can understand one another, even if they don't understand what it means or how it feels to be one. There are at least articulatable trains of logic that we can share with one another, but we haven't for a bunch of reasons we've gone through. And I think men and women are made for one another, are very complementary to one another when we're both on the same page and down. And if that becomes the norm, then ruling classes will be in for some bad shit. And even outside ruling classes, the bad examples of men and women will be in for some deep shit too. Because these bad actors, I think it's very easy, because we don't know one another, people will follow bad actors because they're desperate for some answer. And that's where you get people like Andrew Tate. I would name a woman equivalent of Andrew Tate, but there are a bunch of them, and that's also funny. They're all basically the same person in a very contemporary status quo womany way. It's brutal out here. But I think we can figure it out, and I think this is something we will figure out. Might take some time, but now that we have an idea of a way forward, I think this is something we can get done. We'll all just need to be, at least for a little while, a little more accepting of one another and personally less afraid of being honest about what we are. We need a war council. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.